Welcome back, everyone. Thanks again for joining us, and we're going to go ahead and get started with our second speaker for today. It's our very own Dr. Shimat Joseph. So Dr. Joseph is the turf and ornamental entomologist and state extension specialist at the University of Georgia in Griffin, Georgia. His research program focuses on investigating the ecologically based pest management practices for the major arthropod pests in turfgrass and ornamental systems. His extension program translates this research into applications that industry professionals can use to benefit their businesses and minimize risk to themselves and the environment. Welcome, Shimat, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Richie, for introducing me. Um, what I'm planning to do today is to go over the major pests we have in Georgia. Um, and I'll just start with this slide. Um, so we know that how big industry that we have in Georgia. Turfgrass and green industry is valued quite a bit. And if you can see here in this slide with sort farms, we know that's about 1
Hey,
billion. Sure.
Shimat,
Yes,
can you go ahead and hit that button that says that you want to share your screen?
sure. Can you see that now?
Sure can. Thanks.
I have difficulty in switching slides.
Just click back on PowerPoint real quick, and
Okay.
then
Yeah, now it's working.
perfect.
Great.
Looks good.
Okay, so just I was kind of indicating, turfgrass industry is big in our state, and as you see here, it's hot farms that contributes about 1 billion in sales and is grown in about 25,000 or more acres. Um, Turfgrass industry also contributes with jobs and several things, about $8 billion to our economy here. We can't ignore the home loans. We know that as about spread out, and it's very integral part of our living here in Georgia. So definitely, it's a big industry. Um, if someone asked me, okay, if what are the major issues in turf grass, and this is what I would list. You know, um, or I would say caterpillar pest is definitely a big problem. We think about swordwood worm, fall armyworm, and cutworms. We have some cutworms too. Chinch bugs are also big problems that we have. Basically, in a homeowner settings and in a public settings, we have seen this as a problem. Two lines spittlebug can be a problem, and this year we have seen issues with that. Um, Rhodesgrass Mealybug. This kind of emerged as a pest. We have this in our area in Georgia, but in recent years, it has kind of came up as a big problem. Bill bugs and white grapes, basically the bugs that's in the under the soil, in the feeding the roots, and it's always been the problem. But recently, we are hearing issues with bill bugs in sod farms and in places like that. Mole cricket is also a problem for us, especially in golf courses and in sort farm settings. Typically, their population tend to be controlled. We don't hear much, but for whatever reason, recently we are hearing mole cricket being emerging as a problem. So this is the major pest I will say for our state, and not all the pests we see that everywhere. Certain pests we'll see in the northern part of the state, certain pests we'll see in the southern part of the state. It's basically the conditions that favor this pest. So when we really look at turf grass, this is what I kind of depict. We have pests that's feeding on the foliage. Some are sucking, some are feeding on the foliage directly, removing the tissue. There are others that are in the soil. They pretty much move up and down the soil and tunnel and create problems, bringing up the soil up and things like that. Um, and white grips, and there are other pests that feeds on the roots and reducing the quality of the grass. Um, so for this purpose of this talk, I just kind of categorized pests into different groups, and you can see though I say that it's a surface feeding pest, chewing pest. I group surface feeding, sucking pest, and also subsurface feeding bugs. Those are the groups that I mentioned. So sword webworms, we have several species out here in our state. These are the few that we know. There are tropical sword webworm too that I haven't, on the slide, but they are also a problem for our state. Um, So typically, the larva stage all winter, and they all winter in a silicon, shells like that. You'll see that you see on the slide, and they all winter. They emerge out as adults, and over time, the population builds up. We start seeing the problem starting late August. We start seeing becoming visible as a problem for us in turfgrass settings, especially in the southern part of the state. The moths tend to make like zigzag flight over the grass, especially in the evening times. And what happens is that if they're mated, they started dropping eggs from the sky. They typically, the egg masses are dropped as they fly. And you can see they lay about 200 eggs. And as soon as the eggs hatch, they start feeding the leaf blades. And the feeding mainly occurs in the nighttime. We won't see an activity in the daytime. The larval stages go through 6 to 10 molts before they pupate and become adult. So the pupa stage that you'll find it in the soil and the debris, etc. So this is a kind of a typical sign of a sword webworm damage. It initiates like a small yellowed area in the grass, just like maybe when the dogs pee, you'll see that ammonia causes that the chemical in the urine cause this yellowing. It appears like that, a small yellowish color. Eventually, what happens is that it spreads out and you'll see a bigger patch developing. Basically, is because of the larval feeding. So there are several predators out there that can control it. Ants are all considered as a very good control agent. Um, so that naturally control, but sometimes you'll see the problem really going out of hand. Um, So the time we need to think about when we think about treating them of using insecticide is when you see the adult activity. So the this time when you see adult flight, kind of zigzag flight of moths, and also sometimes they are attracted to the light. You'll see a lot of moths appearing. That is the time that we have to pull the trigger about applying, because when their moths are there, we are seeing them, they are already laid eggs, and the eggs are going to hatch very soon. So we say about 2 weeks period about that point when you see that moth activity. Treating in the afternoon works better because they tend to feed and come out of the soil and start feeding in the nighttime. So maybe that's the best time to put the insecticides. Um, there are several materials out there that is effective. In general, pyrethroids and neonicotinoid insecticides are very effective. Diamides are newer pesticides. They are also effective. Have broad activity against Lepidopteran pests. So always remember to clean up before you treat, so that you remove some eggs that's already existing. So that's a kind of a management scheme for swordwing worm. For armyworm, there's another pest is a big problem for us. This year we have seen isolated issues where the population surged, and as the name suggests, they are fall. They come. The problem comes in the fall. So they all winter typically in the uh, in Florida, and they fly north, using the air current. They move north, and when they land, they start settling down and go through several generations until we see them. So like I would say late July, August, we start seeing them. At that point, they are going through several generations, and they like hot and dry conditions, and that pretty much favor their population to go up. And they are just like swordwave worm, they are attracted to light, and they are very active in the night. So you may not see an activity in the daytime, but you will see them in the night. That's the time they feed. They use any structures for egg laying. So is one picture shown here. You see is a pole. Any structure like this is attractive for them to lay eggs. They lay eggs in a mass. You'll see an egg mass is a fuzzy, grayish, brown-looking egg mass that you will see, and they're like light colors. If there is any structures like bone or any story sheds that is like light colored, that's what they like a lot, and they go and start laying eggs. Eggs hatch, and what happens is that the young and stars, that is, we call it neonites. That's a small, tiny caterpillars that comes out. That pretty much, has a silk. They make a silk, and they just hop down. They fall down to the ground and start feeding. So in August and September, as a condition, we know that it's very hot here, and that in that conditions, it takes only 1 month, about a month to complete a generation. So this is something that I was talking about, the light structures, and you can see all these areas here. These are the areas where they lay eggs, and these are a lot of egg masses. This is a picture I took from the picture from a golf course, and actually Rob sent me this picture with this problem, and you can see a lot of big masses. You can see all these structures. They like this kind of structures. What we have seen in the past is they like to develop early on in the in golf course. In this case, there are areas in the rough areas where, and there are some areas that's weedy and things like that, and they like those areas, and we often ignore to look there, and their population initially develops there and start feeding, and as you can see, the bigger caterpillars now here, and the moths emerge, and they pretty much start moving into the golf courses and areas like that. So the point is that you have to look a little bit outside your area, in any weedy patch or anywhere that they might potentially develop. As you can see here, they easily develop and they start causing problems now. The real turf grass in this case is a golf course. One key factor, I would say, is one easy way to ID whether this is a fall armyworm larvae or not is I will look at their head capsule, and you can see here an inverted Y shape, and that's very, very unique for fall armyworm larvae. And if you see that, that's pretty much indicates that you got the fall armyworm, not the cutworms or other caterpillars you normally see. So controlling caterpillar, fall armyworm caterpillars is not that difficult as long as you intercept early. Younger caterpillars are much easier to kill rather than older caterpillars. We have several options out there. As you can see, ranges from organophosphates to neonicotinoids and carbamate, pyrethroids. So azthiopterin, as you can see here, is a newer uh, pesticide. I would say newer, maybe not new anymore. But that is very effective against caterpillars, and they're expensive too. That is another side of that. Um, but the point is, so if you scout regularly and if you can find it, any pyrethroids should work, like Tempo here or deltamethrin, um, bifenthrin. These products should be very effective. Even a lambda cyhalothrin should work. Moving on to surface pests, but they are sucking in nature. So we have two major ones, that is chinch bugs and spittlebugs. Um, Southern chinch bug, that's a very common in our area, especially in southern part of the state. We have, it's not like we won't see it in the northern part of the state. Yes, we do. It's possible. You can see that. They like St. Augustine grass. It's a grass type. That's what they like a lot. But it's not necessary that they are only on St. Augustine grass. There are other grass types like Bermuda grass and zoysia grass. They love it. Those grasses as well. The key thing is the conditions. If the condition persists hot and dry for a period of time, what happens is that they like to feed in the thatch area, and that's more kind of a moist area for them, and they're happy there. They feed on the whatever there. The plant is not under stress, so you won't see any problem initially. But as the condition gets warmer and dry, no rain kind of situations, their population can build up very quickly, and the damage can appear. So this is one field. Um, it's a homeowner loan. It appeared all green a week before, and this whole happened in a week. So they can build up quickly, and the damage is very quick. So the key thing is that conditions, and once you know that you have chinch bugs, this is something that you need to watch and treat. So chinch bugs, just like any other true bugs, they have 5 larval stages, and you will see the early stages are red in color. It's very small. They're small in size, but they're red, and you see them a lot of red nemes in the grass kind of indicates. And as they grow, different bigger lympholine stars, you start seeing this kind of a band, white band. That's very characteristics to chinch bugs. You won't see that on other false chinch bug or big guide bugs, other bugs that you will see in the grass. The way to determine whether you got it or not is this technique. We call it irritation technique, something like that, where we use a can, any can. We just put the can in the ground, and don't try coffee cups and things like. I tried coffee cups. Thing is that it's very difficult to get them holding into the ground. So we need to get them down maybe a couple of inches, so that is in the grass, and you pour water. And if pour water and if you look for what is floating, if you see about 20 to 25 chinch bugs on the surface of the water, that's kind of triggers that you need to make an application. um, so it's a very easy and quick. I was surprised that a lot of our short farm clients, they're all using this as a technique, and they use this for caterpillars as well. So anything in the grass will float, even caterpillars like fall armyworm, as kind of used as a technique to see what's there. The problem with the grass is the canopy is just a few inches, not like a big, other crops that we talk. Then we don't know exactly what is in there. So this technique helps a lot. So controlling chinch bugs is pretty easy, I would say. Any pyrethroids should work. Um, for example, bifenthrin is very effective, and there are many other options you got to use. There are options for homeowners too. On the basically a lot of the stuff that you buy from the home, from the big stores, these are basically pyrethroids. And for commercial settings, um, landscapers, there are options that you need registration to buy this, but they are effective materials. Moving on to another one, that is two-lined spittlebug. So this can be a problem, especially on centipede grass that we have seen a lot. When you have this problem, you start seeing the grass turning purple, and that is kind of a key symptom that shows that there might be a spittlebug activity. Don't call, being said that, not all purpling is caused by a spittlebug. It's any physiological change. That's one way that grass responds is by purpling. But if you see an activity of a spittlebug, it's more likely that you will see a spittlebug problem. This year we have seen quite a bit of issue with the spittlebugs in the lawns and different places on centipede grass. And we did some work this year, and where we have seen that if you have a spittlebug activity on Bermuda grass and zoysia grass, you won't see purpling, but you'll see yellowing, and the grass will die if the population is very high. So this definitely can be a major pest. So depending on the situation you are in. So unlike chinch bugs, two-line spittlebug like a different condition. They like hot conditions, and that's very common in Georgia. But they like humid condition, meaning if you have rain going through like 2 days or 3 days, and it's still hot, that is a condition that they like, and they start breeding, and their population will go up in that conditions. And if you have a right host, for example centipede grass, we know that they can easily multiply. They can reproduce on those that centipede grass. Their population can go even faster. um, you'll see this is very classical symptom. When you look at a spittlebug activity, this is what you'll see, a frothy spit. That's where the name comes from. And if you dig into that, you'll start seeing nymphs developing inside that. Um, so it's very common, and if you see that, that kind of shows that you have a spittlebug infestation. We have also seen some association with certain ornamental plants, such as hollies. If you have hollies planted um, close to the grass, they like hollies for sure, and they multiply, they develop on this host. So that's something that to keep in mind. If you have this certain favorable hosts, that's something that keep into mind, when you think about management. And one other thing is that the adults won't secrete this spittle. This only nymphal stages produce that. So management of spittlebug can be tricky. You see the list is going thinner and thinner now. Not that many insecticides are listed here. The reason is sometimes difficult to kill. Um, Pyrethroids are the best to go after. Maybe repeated application is needed. Um, if the grass height, I think matters a lot too. If the lawn is maintained in lower height, it's much more easier to kill. And the key thing here is exposure. So the coverage is critical here, and these bugs can hide, and they're bigger in size compared to chinch bugs. So you need a more material and to kill this material, this pest. Um, and these are we have two pyrethroids listed here, and a carbamate and organophosphate. So switching gears to a newer pest. I think this, typically we don't deal with this Rhodesgrass mealybug. It's a emerging problem, I would say. We have it already, but it's naturally controlled by biological control agents. But until recently, for some reason, we are having these issues with Rhodesgrass mealybug, especially in the southern part of the state. I haven't seen, or not came to my knowledge that it is a problem now in the northern part of the state, but we have seen that as a problem in the southern part of the state. Um, so this is a mealybug. It's sometimes earlier days we start calling it as a scale because it looks like a scale but behaves like a mealybug, kind of in between, I would say. But now we call it as a Rhodesgrass mealybug, as a mealybug. Um, So it's an invasive, and it came to this country in 1942 into Texas, and it was a long time ago. And after that, it pretty much spread to the entire Gulf states, including Georgia and Florida. It is a big problem. There are problems in the pastures and in turfgrass alike. And the problem is if the population is very high, they will kill the grass. That's it. It's very straightforward. And most of the grass that we have in our area, they're all susceptible to this pest. Um, we have seen very high numbers in Tiffy gulls and the Tiffy grass types. So the adult, as you can see over here, this is what the adult look like. And so the adults is kind of look, mostly females that you see, and they are red in color, sometimes purple in color, and they secrete this white wax material, and it looks like a cotton swabs on the grass. The female lays about 200 eggs, and you know about 3 months the adult leaves and lays eggs like that. And once the finishes off egg laying, that the female dies off. um, and they don't require any mating, so they reproduce without mating. That means most of the bugs that you see, the mealybugs you see, are all females. Rarely you'll see males, but they are like fly-like appearance with a pair of wings. But rarely you see that. um, so they reproduce in a warmer conditions. You say the temperature is about 60 degrees or more. That's what their favorable temperature, but they can withstand lower temperatures too. Not very low temperature for a longer time, but they can withstand for some time. Um, no overwintering, no diapause exists. So there is no diapause exist. That is pretty much a resting stage for insects to pass through the winter. And in this case, they don't have a mechanism to go into a resting stage like that. Um, they have three nymphal stages, and the first nymphal stage, that's the only stage that can move around, and they are highly mobile. They can move around, and we have seen about 50 nymphs clinging to the nodes. So what happens is that these crawlers, that is the first instars, they move around, and they are looking for a node on the grass that is under the leaf sheath. And once they see that, they put their mouth part inside that. It's kind of a tube they insert into that plant tissue, connect to the phloem tissue. Once that happens, they're pretty much, they cannot move from there. So they are pretty much stuck there. So the second and third instar is just, and the females are just committed to that node where they already put their mouth part. And as they start feeding, their body pretty much, balloons up. They enlarge in size, and as the females start laying eggs. So the maturity for the female, for the nymphs, is about 2 months. Another peculiar thing about the Rhodesgrass mealybug activity is they produce honeydew. So they have a tube that you'll see. Typically from the rear end, they have a waxy hollow tube that takes away from the body of the insect itself, and they secrete honeydew. That is a sugary substance or excreta that comes out from the insect, because they feed on phloem. They take all the excess sugar, and they can't handle that, so they pretty much excrete it. Uh, what happens is that this honeydew is attractive to ants and also honeybees. So we have seen situations where a lot of honeybee activity in golf courses and things like that. So that's kind of indication that you have a roadgrass mealybug problem. Um, Otherwise, there is no point for a honeybee to be hanging around in golf courses, and you'll see a lot of them. Sometimes, a lot of them feeding here, um, and they are pretty much after the honeydew secreted by the roadgrass mealybug. So the peculiar thing is that for IDing is this kind of a hollow tube that I mentioned. If you dig through that, if you see that hollow tube, kind of confirms that it's a Rhodesgrass Mealybug. So this is one turfgrass green. We have seen this infestation. This is supposed to look green, but as you can see, it's not green anymore. So it first turns into yellowish in color, the undergrass, then eventually starts seeing the stunting and death of the grass. And the late stage, you start seeing brown or, something like that. That means pretty much kill the grass. If you look closely, as you can see on this picture, you can see live and dead grass all together. So some grass is dying, some are kind of trying to, survive. If you dig into that, you'll start seeing this mealybug infestation. So we have seen most of the issues in the green in the golf courses so far, but when we sampled in the fairway areas in the golf courses, we could see they are there, but it looks like the grass is able to withstand a little bit than in the green area. Green area is already in stress because the grass has grown, very short, and there's a lot of stress factors to the grass. And I think this mealybug infestation is pretty much not helping. So there is some screening done in Texas, actually, and it was published in 2010 that looked at what all grasses are, resistant. And in this slide, you can see the common grass that we grow here is Bermuda grass. They are most susceptible, and particularly some varieties that we got like Spot, Tiffy, Tiffway, Celebration, Tifton, etc. St. Augustine grass and zoysia grass, these are considered as a intermediately susceptible to this pest. And of course, centipede grass, seashore paspalum, bahia grass, tall fescue, they are resistant. Centipede grass and tall fescue maybe applies for us. I don't know there's not that much plantings going on with seashore paspalum in our area, in Georgia at least. So historically, as I mentioned, after the introduction of this pest, there are several biological controls were introduced, exotic biological control from the native area. Particularly, this particular species from India was released in big numbers in Florida, Texas, and this was considered as a very, very, classical example for, bringing a biological control, and it really took control of it, and no one sprayed for it because this parasitoid is a wasp, and you start, keeping the population down, and you can see providing very good control. And now the idea was that you don't need to spray it at all because they're keeping the population so low that we are not worried about it anymore. But until recently, we started seeing, like last decade onwards, we are seeing some issues with this pest. And this is the work done in 2000s, and it's published in 2009, where the researchers, what they did is they went back to the Gulf states and start sampling and see whether the parasitoids are there or not. And in this figure, you can see there is a lot of hollow circles. That means that there is no parasitoids found, and you'll see a lot of them here. Kind of shows that maybe the biological control is not doing its job as supposed to. Maybe that's one reason what we are seeing as a problem, but we can't conclusively say that based on this data. But that's kind of an indication that we get. Another hypothesis that's up there, again, is believed among some scientists, but not completely proven, is an association with red imported firehand. We know that they are here everywhere, and we haven't seen these ants tenting this Rhodesgrass Mealybug, but the assumption is that they are actually doing it especially in the areas where unmanaged areas, where not like lawns or golf courses or things like that, but on the grass that's growing alongside the road and railroad and areas where the patches where you will see a lot of fire ants, and they're pretty much going after the honeydew and in turn providing, protecting this Rhodesgrass Mealybug from getting parasitized by the wasps. The wasp we were talking about that controlled. So there is kind of not giving protection for the Rhodesgrass Mealybug so that the parasitization and the control is not happening. So that's one hypothesis, kind of it's kind of eluded, but I think there's more work needs to be done really to say this is what's happening. So this year I did a trial because when we have these issues in the golf courses, we don't know what to spray. We have some insecticides, but we are not sure what works and what to spray. And these are the few insecticides I looked at, and you can see that is chlorantraniliprole, that is diamide, a combination, thiamethoxam, and a combination of that, and cyclantraniliprole, that's a newer one, not registered at this point. Altus is also not registered at this point, but it has some activity on sucking pests. We know that from other systems. Ceylan, that is a dinotefuran, that's a neonicotinoid. We know that's registered and we use that. So this trial, this is what it looked like after one application. We are about to do the second application, and you can see we marked in the Gulf green where this problem is, which natural infestation. And this is just to show the plot itself. And because we can do more than what we did on a green because of the aesthetic value of that green itself for play. So here, if you look here into these boxes, you'll see this is a control, and this is Altus, and this is combination of thiamethoxam and the diamide I mentioned. And you'll see, it's hard to see that well, but you'll see some differences in greenness itself. We can visually see an effect after the application. This is control, and you'll see the little bit more greenness here compared to other boxes. For example, here, or this control here, or even xylem dinotefuran. This is the picture taken again, the same thing it's sometimes very difficult to capture the effect. But you can see here is a little more kind of greener here compared to non-treated control here. So we could see some visual effects. Looking at the numbers, if you look at the y-axis here is number of mealybugs, and there's different treatments that you can just indicated. And you can see the number of bugs itself is lower in this treatment called Altus, and also a combined application with thiamethoxam and the diamide. I think it's basically the thiamethoxam is doing the job, looking at that. But in this case, after a month after application, we didn't see much difference between thiamethoxam itself and a combination. About 2 months later, again, we start seeing that Altus has low numbers as compared to ferens here, and the combination of a diamide and thiamethoxam is definitely better compared to control or the diamide by itself. So it's kind of a first study, but needs to be repeated. Looks like we have some tools that we can extract. There is some promise that needs to be, done, repeated again, so that we can we can recommend that. If Altus is the one has to be going forward, needs to be registered. It's not registered at this point. And xylem, that we used, I recommended xylem. This is when the issue came up, but apparently it's not working. You can clearly see that. Okay, now switching to another pest system, that is billbugs and mole crickets and white grubs. There are pests in the soil in the below surface conditions. Billbugs, again, a very similar story compared to as I was referring to Rhodesgrass Mealybug, is an emerging problem. We always had that, also always had that, and now we are talking a lot about billbugs. Not sure why, but now we have issues. Hunting billbug, that's the one species we are seeing a lot. where there are several other species out there, but hunting billbug is the most that we are collecting in our traps at this point. Eggs are laid on the stolon, on the stem of the grass, and the eggs hatch. And the first three life stages, they feed within the grass itself. Even the stem of the grass. They will not go out of the plant itself. So 1 to 3 larval stages, they stay inside the grass, feed in there, and the fourth and fifth they drop because the size of the larvae becomes bigger. They cannot sustain there. They drop from the stem into the soil. At that point, they start feeding on the roots, and they pupate in the soil, and the adults comes out. It's kind of a general life cycle. Like I mentioned, the eggs, they are punched inside the stem, and the larval stage, as you can see, they start feeding within the stem itself. So one symptom that we see is yellowing from the problem when you have it. The easy way to say whether you got it or not, one quick thing is that since they feed all this the stem part, the grass will become weak and it won't hold together as supposed to be. So if you pull it, gently pull it, it will come off right with your hand. It shouldn't happen like that. But that's kind of indication that you got a bill bug problem. Um, like I said, the size is very small. Often what I have seen is it's very hard to see a larvae in the soil. They are so small, and the first three instars, they are inside the plant, so you won't see them. So there is no activity and you start seeing grass dying. So it's kind of an ironic situation. So just to keep in mind that you're not seeing because they are inside the grass and they're developing inside the stem, the stolon, and that's why you're not seeing um, the bug itself. And for our research purpose, we have to dig through several grass to see some. So it's very hard to see a larvae in the real situation. So this is the general, phenology of the pest. So this is from North Carolina, and their phenology. They say that they come. You can see the adult emergence starts in March, and they start laying eggs, and you'll see all the different larval stages, in different soil depths. Um, but I don't know whether this holds really well in our situation in Georgia. That's something that I am looking at this year. I mean, starting this year. So we'll be in future, we'll have a better grasp of their phenology and how many generations we got. Based on what in North Carolina, they have 1 generation, and in Florida, they have up to 6 generations of billbugs. Um, and we use this trap. We call it linear pitfall trap. It's not very difficult trap to make for monitoring billbugs. You can see it's a pitfall trap. That's what this is in the center. And we have this longitudinal pipes. You can see PVC pipe with a slit on it. So basically, as these bugs crawl, they fall into this, and they can't go this direction. They have to go this direction, and they walk and they fall. They crawl. Basically, they don't. We haven't seen them flying, and they are active in the night. So this trap works very well for us to trap for pill bugs. And like I kind of indicated, we have seen their population build up. Their phenology is little different can be different from North Carolina, because we this year we had this fake spring, I would say. Sometime in winter, late winter, we have warmer situations where we started seeing billbugs coming out from the ground, like in big numbers, so you can see. And then after that, we had a cooler condition. I think that's where the numbers went down, and again they came back. But by June, July, the numbers went very low. I didn't put that in data here in the slide, but the bottom line is that the population stayed very low from that point until now too. We haven't seen any population buildup. So kind of shows maybe there's only 1 generation that we have in Georgia, but we have to repeat this work to really say that conclusively. So this is a figure I just want to show you, kind of shows the symptoms. They appear just like sword webworm symptoms and all, and appears in a small patch. What happens is that these different patches coalesce together and become a bigger and bigger patch. Then that point you start seeing problems. We have seen bigger problem in zoysia grass with billbugs than in Bermuda grass, partly because we believe is that the zoysia grass take a longer time to come out of dormancy, and they grow slow in compared to Bermuda grass. And because of that, their symptoms and the damage happens quite severe in a little bit severe in zoysia grass than in Bermuda grass. So within the Bermuda grass, within the zoysia grass, yes, you can see there are different um, zoysia grass cultivars here. We have seen big numbers collected from Xeon and Emerald. These are, narrow, fine textured zoysia grass, and we have seen big numbers compared to broad textured zoysia grass cultivars like Altor or Zenith. So, this is very preliminary at this point. We have to repeat this work so that we can say something conclusively. So managing hunting billbug, if we are targeting adults, especially in the springtime, I think pyrethroids will be the best way to go. And for larval stage, have got to be something systemic. So neonicotinoid insecticides appears to be effective. But if it is something that going after both, then there is combination products out there. That is a neonic and pyrethroid like Aloft and Alectus and stuff like that. Acyliprin is also shown very effective against billbugs. Other tactics that we need to keep in mind, they are active in the night, something to remember. Once you have infestation, it's curative. When you start seeing symptoms, it's difficult to manage at that point. So always to have an understanding whether you got the pest in your area or not. That's very important. Biological control, I think using nematodes appears to be a good way to go, but looks like they are not, they are expensive. That's one thing we learned. And entomopathogens, they are not very effective. That's what we learned. Um, Moving on to another pest, that is white grubs. So white grub, when you say it's a complex. There are different types, different species out there. You can have it a single species at a time or a combination. And damage is very similar to what I indicated with the hunting billbug. And the problem here is same. You won't see whether you got the problem until you sample it. So the sampling becomes very important. This is, you can imagine how many white grapes can be there. The thing is that you had to cut it open. So in this case, that's kind of demonstrating that. Another issue that we have seen is that there are other vertebrates that are attracted to these grapes, and you see so much activity. They pretty much tunnel and start feeding, and and they pretty much mess the grass up. And that's kind of an indication, but it's not a good indication, but something to keep in mind. Primarily, we see these three species of beetles that can be a problem, and we call it as a white grub problem. That is Japanese beetles, and May-June beetle, and um, green beetle. So, like I indicated, these spots here, this is some, this tunneling and the grass that is pushed out by some other vertebrates in the soil. So we can ID them, looking at their rear end, and you can see some patterns that, if you look carefully, that we can differentiate between the species. Something to know exactly what you got. Just shows the sheer numbers, some pictures. So just to show you a few slides where their life cycle, and I would just want to pinpoint that Japanese beetle have only one generation, and you start seeing late May, the adults come in, and adults they feed on any other ornamental plants like roses or crepe myrtle and things like that, but they start laying eggs in the soil after mating, and that's how the generation builds up. So they typically have one generation. When you look at the May-June beetle, on the other hand, they have multiple years to complete a generation. So if you see these guys, about the same time in the April, May, or even June, they are feeding on the ornamental plants, but they start laying eggs in the soil, in the grass, and you can see their life cycle takes a longer time to complete. So this is a figure from a study that I did this year, and you can see on Japanese beetle, and this just confirms that acyliprin is definitely a good material, and looks like we got a good control on white grapes compared to untreated using acyliprin. And you can see the rates that I used for my trial. Even imidacloprid provides this good suppression on white grapes. So this is a summary on materials that we got. And you can see acyliprin is a good material for white grape control, and imidacloprid is a standard material that we regularly use. Mole crickets. I'll quickly go through mole cricket and I'll stop. There are two species that we got. One is tawny mole cricket, another one is southern mole cricket. And tawny mole cricket is a pest actually that feeds on the grass. Southern mole cricket is actually not directly feeding on the grass, but they tunnel, and that's a problem. They are actually predators. And they feed on other soil insects, but they tunnel, and that's what the problem is. And it kind of shows the range, and you can see the southern mole cricket. You'll see more in the southern part of the state if you look here, um, and the tawny mole cricket you'll see more in the northern range. So they all winter as adults, are larger nymphs, and they emerge out in the springtime. So the males make some kind of chamber, make sound, attract females, and they mate, and the females start laying eggs. The key thing to remember here is the flight activity of these two species. So tawny mole cricket flight is pretty early. It starts early and can sustain longer. But southern mole cricket, we tend to see their flight happens little delayed compared to tawny. They like warmer conditions, warm, humid nights. That's a night that they like. So any like in night like warm and humid, that's a time they like to fly, and you see that activity. I already kind of indicated that their activity. Tawny mole cricket starts off a little early. Just want to show that, and southern mole cricket flight is a little delayed compared to this species, tawny mole cricket. So they lay eggs in clutches, and you'll have about 40 eggs in a clutch, and takes about a month for eggs to hatch. And as soon as it hatch, they start digging, into the soil, and and they go through 8 to 10 instars before the adult goes into the all wintering stage. Like the problem is this damage of tunneling. That is the key problem with mole crickets, not entirely because they feed on the grass. So they tunnel and mess up the grass. This is one classical problem that we are seeing on golf courses. So typically the management is using an insecticide called fipronil that works very well on them. And for whatever reason, recently we are seeing increasing problem with the mole crickets. In addition to that, the natural control, that is nematode, that is naturally present, and that controls this pest. Um, and for some reason, we believe maybe the drought conditions that we had in previous years, maybe the nematode population has gone down and not naturally controlling these mole crickets. Another biological control that we have in our system is LARA bicolor. that is a wasp, and you might have seen that. They are very common in our state. They are very specific on mole crickets. As you can see over here, they paralyze the host and lay an egg, and the larval stages develops on the on this mole cricket and eventually kill them. And between this nematode and Laura bicolor, this parasitic wasp, they are pretty much managed very well in our state. Um, but we have this looks like an emerging problem too. Their populations are emerging out in a best status in some areas. And for the wasp, this is their favorite, I would say. Spermacos is a weed, and they like this kind of flowering plants because they're looking for nectar and pollen, and any flowering plant, I think they like to hang around. So this wasp is everywhere. They can stay alive, and they are very host specific on mole cricket. Anyway, this is all I got, and I will stop here. And for the sake of time, and I can take questions. Let me open this up. So we have some time for questions. Let me know if you have any questions. Okay. So far, I don't have any questions. So on any topic, if you have any questions, let me know, and you can find my email address just going through entomology department of UGA, and don't hesitate to ask me any questions. Email me. You can find my contact there, and you can contact me anytime, and I am more than happy to answer all your questions if there are any. So um, I can read one question there. I am asked often about bacillus for white control. Can you talk about that? Well, I indicate you're talking about Bacillus thuringiensis, that is BT, right? So my understanding is that BT is naturally present in our soils, and that there might be some activity going on, and they are controlling it. But what we understand is that they are not very specific on white grapes. So there are other species out there, other commercial. I think there is commercially available products out there. There are, and it's called Pompili. That's a species name, I think, and that is very effective on white grapes. Yeah, Pompili, that's exactly you're mentioning. So that is very specific on white grapes. So this species is very specific, and they can keep their population under control. Yes, the answer to your question is yes, it can work. But you have to think about the cost and those aspects. Okay, let me move on to the next question. We have seen some limited control with fipronil or any other recommendations. That is a good question. So that is exactly some issues that we have right now, is that there is some pockets where fipronil being used, and we always see that that is the best control. Um, uh, and that is the standard control, and we always rely on that single product. But there are other products like organophosphates, such as SF8. SF8 can work against mole cricket, um, but the problem is, it's not as effective as fipronil. Um, so why fipronil is not working at this point, we don't know exactly what it is, but our assumption is maybe there is some resistant population building up. We don't know. So those are the things that we need to look into, or the natural control like nematodes and the Laura bicolor, the parasitic wasp I indicated. These two, their numbers are going down. those things has to be looked at and see that. Yeah. Okay, so moving on to the next question. Sword webworms have been a real bat this year. Is there anything to apply to help before they populate? Well, the effective material for sword webworms are pyrethroids, apparently. And pyrethroids in general, have very low residual activity. But we know that if you use bifenthrin and permethrin, these two products, those are available now in the market. They can give up to 2 to 3 weeks of residual activity. So monitoring, that's, as I said, that's one important thing to do. And if you see moth activity, these moths are very tiny, and we'll see that knob in the end, in the face, kind of a notched. So you'll see that typical. It's not like a typical other moths. They have a very characteristic, very narrow, and a notch on the face, and that's how you see them. And if is their activity is going up, that's the time to think about um, making going with an application. Okay, there is a question about would you recommend killing all the fire ants in the lawn? Well, that's a very good question. If you can do it successfully, that's a problem, right? So fire ants can be a problem in lawns, and we have multiple. There are tons of products out there, and there are two ways they are controlled. One is using baits, as we know. We put a bait with insecticide in there, and these workers, as they crawl, they take this bait into their home, that mound, and start, you know, feeding the young ones, and the colony dies there. That's one approach, and is very effective approach. And second approach is using insecticides. You know, so you can. One thing to remember is that they are concentrated in the mounds and not everywhere. So when you see a one or two fire ants in the lawn, you have to make sure where they're coming from and how many of them will be there. They may be spread out, and it's not very economical and illogical to go after that approach. But if you see a congregation like along a mound and all, like and mound and all, that's the way to go and make an application and control. And you can use both tactics. And as I indicated, there is a lot of products out there that in as a bait and also a surface spray application. So another question about spittlebugs. For spittlebug control, do you recommend using insecticide soap as a drench or splinch? Well, I do not. Um, Spittlebugs are very difficult to kill. So insecticide soap might help you to say whether you got a spittlebug problem or not, because the insects often get irritated with soap, and I haven't seen a kind of a aggregation pattern in their infestation so far. So it's not like you go to one spot of your lawn or yard and you apply. That may not be the case with spittlebug, because you might see them spread out evenly, or in a bigger scale. So in that situation, insecticide soap may not be in the right approach. But insecticides it can kill for sure, but may not be an effective way to go for this pest. And they are bigger in size, and as you might have already observed, the adults are very highly mobile. They take off, they jump, and they take off. Only thing you're targeting is larval stages. So your better luck will be when you see a lot of spittles in the grass. If you see spittles, means you tend to see more nymphs developing there, and that's an approach. And again, the spittle by itself is protecting the nymphs. So any application you make is difficult to get to that. Um, so my answer to your question is, insecticide soap may not be the best and effective way to go for controlling spittlebugs. And this is all I got. It looks like it. answer questions. As I indicated, for the sake of time, probably I should stop here. But you are always welcome to ask me questions, and my email address is available at UGA Entomology website. Okay, thank you so much.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Joseph, for a great talk. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this morning.